Awesome. Can everyone hear me? Am I too loud? Maybe. There we go. Hi, welcome to DrupalCon and welcome to my talk. We're going to be talking about the unspoken algorithm. So this is going to go over neurodivergence, identity, and turning exclusion into inclusion. Ooh. So before we go, let me just introduce myself. I would walk away, but you got to hear me. My name is Veronica Shelton. Nice to meet everyone. I love video games, cooking, puppies, neurotech, and nature. I am ADHD, been diagnosed since I was in 2nd grade, on and off 5th grade, and then 7th grade, they really confirmed it. Tech founder and dog mom to the most amazing Australian shepherd you've ever seen in your life. And for balance, I love Negronis. Nice to meet everyone. And I need to learn how to use this. Okay, so before we jump in, now that you know a little bit about me, I'm going to learn a little bit about you guys, right? So how many here identify with being neurodivergent? Oh God, that is so great and beautiful. I feel like a lot of people have been learning about their brains and how our brains work, and so I feel like our tribe is getting bigger now, right? We're like kind of trending in a good way. I think we need to see the positive of it, but welcome. Awesome, okay. So let me be vulnerable first. This is the first year that I have been open about being neurodivergent. I went a lot of my life. I am 35, and the past 2 years have been slowly me opening up about it. And I think that's a lot of us, right? We grew up in generations where it wasn't something that was as openly accepted. There are a lot of negatives that came with it. And so I'm new to this, and I'm new to speaking about it. This is only my 2nd event talking to it, so if I have my cards and I'm a little nervous, that's why. Just letting you guys know. Awesome, and that is okay, that is me all the time. All right, so also I felt like there's like 11 other classes happening right now, or talks, and it's like, if we were in Hogwarts or something, right, I'd be like the herbology teacher that like makes metaphors, you know? Kind of like, I was telling him, like Professor Sprout meets Sybil, like all over the place, so hi, that's me. Okay, so now that you know a little bit about me, I keep going to the next slide, let's learn a little bit more about you. I know who's neurodivergent, that is great. And then next question is, have you ever found yourself in a space that just wasn't built with you in mind? Anyone here ever felt that way? I think some of us have, right? Yes. Like maybe in school, when you were in class and you felt like, why does everyone else get this but me? I think a lot of us have felt that, kind of like a glitch in the system, and that's okay. An example I like to use for moments like that would be Drupal. In Drupal, if I had to keep it on brand, would be like the paragraphs feature. When this first came out, it was different. I feel like templates were rigid and you had to know how to code in order to make any kind of change in Drupal, and so you really felt like if you didn't know, if your brain didn't work in a certain way, you couldn't do a certain thing. And then they came out with paragraphs, and suddenly things were a lot different. Instead of forcing you to fit the structure adapted to you. It was modular, visual, so a lot of people who had those kind of visual types of learning and ways, this worked for us. And it wasn't just a better tool, it felt like validation, I think, for a lot of people. And I put this here because this is CK Engine. I think I just met them in the expo. But it just built things for you and how you thought. And I thought that was something to compare this to, because a lot of us, when we get into these environments and we're like, why don't they work for us? We feel like we're not enough. Like we don't know enough, and we have to learn these things, and we have to learn how to adjust. And sometimes it's not you, sometimes it's the environment. And it's products like these that I think make such a difference, because it validates that, no, we just didn't build this shit for you, right? We just didn't have you in mind. And so that's why I like to use that as an example. Okay, next. Raise your hand if you've ever entered a room and instantly felt like the vibe shifted. Or like, right, you're sitting in a meeting or somewhere and you felt like everyone could tell you were a little different. Anyone feel that way, ever? me too. This is me always. In strategy meetings, on calls, on stages, people are never quite sure what to do with me because I don't look like the prototype of what I am. And I think I felt that today a few times, where it's like they could look at me and be like, oh, okay, maybe I have a little glitch that happens. Maybe I am ADHD, so there's little things that pop up and suddenly people are like, what the hell was that, you know? So I think that is something that happens. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I have a flex card. This is my flex card. I've spent over 20 years in my industry. I've worked with billion-dollar companies. I've built tech projects or products that we probably have touched every day. You probably have seen to yesterday, bootstrapped 2 tech companies and worked with clients from grassroots nonprofits to Fortune 500s. And yet, still to this day and for years, I've gone into rooms where I was treated like an unexpected variable, and my presence needed justifying. And I used to think that maybe I missed a rule book. Maybe there was a guidebook or something that could help me blend in with people. Like if I spoke a certain way or if I looked a certain way, people would treat me differently. And going back to my Silicon Valley days, I did just that. So I used to go to meetings, and I realized if I wore glasses, people would think I was smarter. And so I loved contacts because that was easy. Now I have LASIK. But I used to wear glasses to be taken a little bit more serious, especially as a woman in tech. And then I learned that people who were not techie, if I wore a turtleneck and glasses, they see me like fucking Steve Jobs. And I was like, figured it out. I'm like, this is how I'm going to be. This is how I'm going to brand myself. I literally had nothing but turtlenecks and glasses, all different types, just so I can be taken serious in meetings. And people found my quirks quirky. And what I realized was I was doing this and I was losing myself, right? I was becoming something I wasn't, and I felt like I didn't feel like myself. And I think a lot of people, especially with autism, that is really hard because all you want to do is be very straightforward with everyone, right? We always want to be very forward. Like, I don't like to lie. I like to say what I feel. So I had to figure out how to get out of this. What I did realize and learn in this moment was I used to place the blame on people. And I think this is something that all of us can take in, is when I was sitting in these rooms, right, and you were feeling like you weren't, like the tone was shifting, is because you were looking for the same thing that they were looking for. And that's something that I had to learn to take accountability and ownership of. When I was going into these meetings, I was expecting them to know who I was. I was expecting them to know, hey, maybe I am a little neurospicy. You'll see it, and then you'll just adjust to it. I have all these things of experience, but you can't see that on the surface. So what I ended up doing was learning to, instead of seeking adjustment, I seeked alignment. And in that came opening up, just like I did with you in this meeting when I first got here, saying, I'm new to this. This is something that's new for me. I am ADHD. There's gonna be some quirks here. It creates an expectation and comfort in how you are receiving me now and how I'm receiving you, right? And so when people, you do feel those differences in rooms, it's good to consider these things of, they are looking for the same comfort you're looking for. Some people, when they, especially in work, they look for signals and cues that we've been taught to look for in people. I see someone with glasses, I think they're smart. This was something that was programmed in our brain. It's just human, whatever. By saying, hey, by the way, I don't wear glasses, but I've been in my industry for 20 years, and here's my backing. Done. Glasses are no longer needed. So that's the moment I stopped trying to explain my value to people, and I learned that to just start embracing the way I naturally show up, and I started honoring my own algorithm. And I looked for alignment rather than adjustment. Now, I did have a whole slide to go over what we're talking about today, which is neurodivergence and identity, but I feel like we have a real good understanding. Does anyone not know what they mean, though? Like one person? Okay. I'll go through these really quick, but I think we all know that neurodivergence is when we have brains that work differently than what's considered typical, whether it's ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or other cognitive variations. And the big thing is it's just not something that you need to fix, right? I think that's the biggest thing. And I was coming in here, like, some people might not know, and it's like, how do I put in their head? You can't fix it. It's not a flaw. It's just how we work. You have to learn how to adjust with it. And then identity is the layered lived experience of it all. So all of us have layers. I can look at all of us and see that we do. It's who you identify as. So it's your culture, your race, your gender, your neurotype, your ability, all together that create this person, right? It's not just one thing. I'm not just autistic and ADHD, and that's my bucket. I'm a woman. I'm a woman of color. I have other things that create all of these things that change how people perceive me. And that's something that we all have to consider as we're navigating the world. Okay, so I could skip some of the parts of me preaching to other people, which is don't wait for someone to ask for support, build it into the foundation. But I think it is important for us too to take this back with us, where when we do go into our jobs, into places that make us feel different, it's good for them to know this, right? Inclusion isn't a checklist, it's a practice. We're not like ADA compliant checking things. This is something that you have to build into your culture. And as someone who is neurotypical, it's something, or neurodivergent, it is something to kind of take ownership of if it's not there. We do have to be the heroes for the people who are not able to speak up for themselves, because a lot of us don't. We're really quiet. Okay, getting to the good part, the invisible algorithm. So this is me talking to us now, okay? There is this invisible algorithm. This kind of creates the idea of who gets funded, who gets heard, who gets hired, who's too much, right, in our environments. And it's not in our job descriptions, it's not in our Git repos. Like, we know that people see us differently. There's numbers out there that show that as soon as our quirks are seen or other things are seen, there's this click that maybe we're not who they thought we were. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. But it's this unspoken belief that success looks like a certain kind of person moving in a certain kind of way. And this kind of belief can be projected onto us very hard, where we start to believe it. And I like to say, if you look around, this would be a toxic environment, but if you look around at all the highest achievers at your job or on your team, and they all look the same, you did not find your formula to success, right? You found your bias, right? What's missing? There's nothing that works if it's all this. That's not how it works. That's not how we get innovation. So, we'll go there in a minute. We'll go there right now. There's facts that show this, and I'm going to start with all the identities, and we'll see what I mean. Black employees are 30% more likely than their white peers to feel the need to code switch just to be seen as professional. This is one level. This is race, right? Y'all are not out of this. Neurodivergent individuals make up 20% of the global population, yet only a fraction ever make it into leadership, and that fraction is very low, incredibly low. I don't know if I put it in here, but it's because most workspaces are designed to reward sameness and not difference. Here we go. And this is a fact that we cannot get in the US because they will hide this shit till the end of it. In the UK, just 31% of neurodivergent adults are employed at all. That's not a pipeline problem, that's a system failure, and that's horrible, and our numbers here are not much better, nor are our rights. And then there's women. We make up almost half of the workforce, if not more now moving into 2025. We know the shift is happening. Sorry, men. Yet, we hold less than 30% of executive roles. 30. We're doing the work, but we're still getting passed over for power. Now, when you stack those up, you stack up who you are, right? How your brain works, and then what you look like. It's disgusting. And I think a part of it is because a lot of us are so silent about it, like I was for almost 35 years, where we aren't speaking out, and for the fact that these companies and places need to uphold cultures and make systems and things that work for us, because a lot of us are different. To say that just 20% of the global population make up, like, that's a huge number, right? Okay. And that's just like from, I think this was from like 3 years ago. This was because half of us are not even getting diagnosed. So there's that. Moving on, hold on. I like to say this. A powerful team isn't a copy-paste army, it's a bouquet. What those stats were not inclusion. They were assimilation disguised as culture, and it has to stop. But here's the truth. Real innovation doesn't bloom in monocultures, which is me preaching to the people who are not here right now, which says a lot too, right? They should be here. They should be curious and wondering about these things, but they're not. A good stat is McKinsey found that teams with high diversity are 35% more likely to outperform the rest. Duh. Because sameness might feel safe, but it rarely builds anything extraordinary. And this is something that I really love about the Drupal community. I feel like whether you're submitting patches, you're helping out in forums, you're maintaining modules, right? There's a sense of like togetherness and being seen. And I love that. That is one of, I am on every side, WordPress, Slate, whatever. The Drupal community is the safest that I feel safest in the Drupal community, even though there is some toxicness, we all know that. But the community here is very rare, because in the broader tech world, people like us often feel like if I'm not wearing the glasses, if I'm not wearing the turtlenecks, if I don't have my credentials written on my forehead and 80 references in my back pocket, I'm gonna be overlooked and undervalued. And I did have another preachy for people who are not here, so we won't have to go over that. So instead, this brings me to a big part of neurodivergence is not a flaw, it's a framework. I like to say neurotypicals lay the groundwork, neurodivergence see the path that no one else can take or sees to take. My framework is that I am ADHD, owning it. It is who I am, it's how I think. I'm a little awkward sometimes, I glitch. If I don't make my bed in the morning, I have to stare at it for 20 minutes. I have my things, okay? And my hyper-focus is human behavior. So all of us have a hyper-focus. Is anyone in here autistic? Okay, so you get it? Okay, so then you definitely get it. My hyper-focus is human behavior, so I like to study people. Okay, how they talk, and it's a natural thing. You know why we do that? Huh? Yes. And honestly, this trickles down into anyone here with ADHD. You got it too, okay? You're not safe. So this is how we end up becoming maskers, expert maskers at that. It's really dangerous. I like to tell people that the typical brain, and hold on, let me get a drink because my mouth is very dry. The typical brain is like a highway. It's clean, straight ahead, you know where your destination is, you're good to go. My brain is not. My brain is like a forest trail, okay? And anyone with ADHD can relate to this too. Our brains are everywhere. We can be in a meeting and they will say, this is the problem. Our brains will Usain Bolt to the solution, right? That is our value, that is what we bring, and it's not always appreciated. I like to say, I'm in the forest while everyone's on that highway. I'm in the forest looking at the damn trees and bunnies, and I'm like back there like, oh wow. And I'm finding bugs, right? If there's any devs in here, that's usually where you find them. A lot of devs have ADHD, okay? So that's why though, because we're looking at all the other things that no one else is looking at. It's what makes us unique. Different minds make different paths. I wrote this, right? Different minds make different paths, and so it creates different opportunities. And I love this because this is like, if I can get it tattooed across my fucking body, I would. Because it's like, how do you tell people like that is how the world works? Nothing we've ever used. Most of the most successful people that you see you see it. We see how their brains are different. We know when we see each other. That's where innovation comes from, and yet somehow we have stats that say 20% of us are, how does that make sense? Okay. Anyway, I used to think my weaknesses, getting distracted, nonlinear thoughts, learned to say it's creative solutions, feeling deeply, deep focus, insight, seeing patterns others missed, my sensitivity to what's going on, is pattern recognition, which is something that we all have here. How many people have ADHD? Higher, so everyone can see. Okay, yes, okay. So we see where we're at, right? Pattern recognition is something that we seriously, wait, what's the others here? What are you? You said you're neuro? I'm for ADHD. Okay. See, I notice everyone, okay? Okay, so this is why, because I started appreciating my blueprint and my framework, I stopped seeing my difference as something to overcome, something I had to get rid of and blend and water down. And I started treating it as something I openly leaned into and found the value of and started respecting and owning, okay? And for employees, I have another thing in here because it's like, innovation doesn't happen when everyone's reading the same map. It happens when someone brings a whole new language to the journey. And that is another thing that is very much the truth. A lot of times you'll be on teams where it will come off as a threat. You will have thoughts and things that your team leaders will probably look at and say, you're looking at a completely different map than them, and they find it like, no, we have to stay on mine, right? And they miss out on the value. And again, I had pieces to talk to them, but they're not here. Let's go into another part, which is being on your own path. When you're on your own path and you're in this forest and you're thinking differently, it could feel a little lonely sometimes. And this can create insecurities. It's a little weird. You start doubting yourself. You want to assimilate because why is no one else here with me? Why do I feel like I think differently than everyone else? And I like to bring another metaphor. I told you that would be my thing if I was a professor. My other metaphor into this, which is, everybody look at the screen. Imagine being the only candle in a pitch black room. At first, it feels like you're too much, right? You're noticed. People see you, you're different. But then, the candle starts to reveal what's being hidden. There's cracks, there's wiring, there's bugs. And that is kind of like our own kind of form of leadership when we bring those to light, when we illuminate our strengths that we usually would suppress. Is it saying, hey, I know that I'm different, but these are the things that my difference brings to the table that's valuable. And when we do that, we open room for others to admit maybe you didn't even know that other people on your team had ideas too that they were too afraid to talk about. So, hold on. How do I go to the next slide? So, yeah, we can bring this. So, as it being another form of leadership, we can say that offering a new perspective in a meeting is a form of leadership. This is for you guys. How can I be a leader? And if you work on a team where you have a leader, how can you still maintain that? Advocating for one change that makes things better for someone else. Existing loudly and gentle at the same time. Basically, the best advice I can give here is speaking up and speaking out about your differences and being open with your team about it, not hiding behind it. My business partner and I set out to be this change. Not saying everyone here has to do that, but when we started Oak Theory, that's why we did it. We weren't looking to be founders. We just got tired of trying to find space where we felt like we were always the only ones on that path, where every idea was being suppressed and it was too much, where we felt like maybe we were a threat because we thought the way we thought and looked the way we looked, where it wasn't normal. And so we built one. We built Oak Theory. We built a place where we can do that. And so that was my part there. And then I had another part where I was going to go and talk to the people, but again, they're not here. So let's jump into an exercise I like to do with myself And I tried to make this as simple as possible because I do this almost once every 2 weeks when I have to like namaste from working with clients of all types. And it's a framework I like to call Think, See, Do. And we'll start with the first one, sorry. The first one is spot the pattern. Is this discomfort mine, or is this something this environment keeps repeating, right? Sometimes it's not us, sometimes it's the architecture, and recognizing this pattern gives us power. Instead of saying what's wrong with me, say, have I felt this before, okay? I'm gonna give you an example. And this actually happened 2 weeks ago. I had a client who accused me of being intimidating, okay? They did this in front of my team, dismissed me, said, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Cried, I don't know, yelled. I was shaken up. I never had this happen in this way before. It wasn't ever so loud, and I was confused. And I truly thought I must have done something wrong because I take ownership of my actions, right? And I've had this happen where I have been told I'm intimidating by clients who say maybe, and I just assume this is me. I was like, I come off intimidating, maybe I'm speaking to people in the wrong way. Maybe the way my tone is, I don't see it. And I think this speaks to a lot of people because a lot of times people will tell us who we are and we take that. We take it for Bible. We'll be like, well, I know that I have this thing because this is just who I am because people have told me that this is who I am. And sometimes you have to spot that pattern right here, right? Is this discomfort mine? Or is it something that keeps repeating, and why? In this moment, I had to see if this is a pattern, and I had to go to the root of it. I had my team and I look at our meetings together. Before I even did it, we record all our meetings, so we looked at it. When I did, I seen that my tone was calm, my words were respectful, I was helpful, measured, and professional. The team agreed. We could not find the problem. It was a relief, but also very fucking confusing. But it showed me how easy someone could say something and we can believe it, including ourselves. We can just instantly, especially neuro, right? When we have something, we don't understand ourselves fully already. And so when someone comes and tells us something, usually we take it as advice because we're like, thank you for telling me I have this thing. I didn't know I did. But in this moment I realized, oh my God, sometimes I have to learn how to just trust myself. What happened in this moment is I realized she wasn't reacting to anything I did. She was reacting to who I was. It was how I made her feel. It had nothing to do with me, right? And that's something that's really hard to tackle until you create habits like this, where you start saying, this is a pattern. What am I gonna do next time this happens? Does anyone here have a pattern that they were told about? What is it? Mm-hmm.
I am reminded, like in your situation, the first thing that can come to my mind and going, I'm dealing with somebody's implicit bias. That means that they are not aware that they even have this
Amen.
bias that because you are a woman, because you are a woman
Yes.
of color, and because you happen to have these acronyms that maybe most people don't understand.
Yes.
There's not enough representation.
Yes.
You know, and so people have this preconceived notions that you are limited when you're not.
Yes.
And therefore, now if you're proving that you're capable,
It's confusing.
There, you know, and plus, for a lot of the way our minds work, explicit is best, not vague. People don't know how to go.
You should be, you want to be out here? Because that is beautiful. No, that's very exactly. That's the truth.
But it's the truth. And so when you are explicit, when you do notice and say that one thing in the corner that no one else says, even though on every resume it says we want out of the box thinkers,
Mm-hmm.
the moment we show that we can be that,
Mm-hmm.
oh, wait a minute, no. You have to go back in your corner
Yes.
because we didn't expect that.
Did not.
And so it's a hard place to scaffold.
It is.
Sometimes we can't always read when people are being sarcastic or people are just being, you know, whatever, dancing around things. It's hard to navigate, but we also have to take in consideration that a lot of us are working 5 times harder than the next person to us.
And that's hard to say too, isn't it?
And that's a drain.
Yes. And that's like, you hit it right on the head.
So within that, you also have to, you're right, is this mine or is this the other person? If it's not mine, I'm throwing it over.
Yes.
And I don't have, it's not my circus, not my monkey.
I like to make, I love that one.
Not
It's
my
true.
fish, not my alien.
It's not your thing. And I think that's exactly it. And I have a bucket that I write down. Like, I have a bucket of little things that I write down now because I started doing this. And it's all the things you said are true, and it's built into our system. It's how people think, and that's the part of taking accountability and ownership of being like, okay, as a grown and mature human, I'm going to understand that this has nothing to do with me. It just sucks that it affects me, right? That's the part that makes this very hard. And that's why the hard truth is the only way around it is through it. Being brave enough to speak up about it, bringing it to the surface, or else you're just a quiet civilian always taking the higher road and just letting it happen, and then it continues. And that's the candle. We have to be the illuminators, right? Because when you speak up like you just did, other people heard you. And it changes the way other people are able to think and process and take things in. These are things that I would hope, as we bring this into work environment cultures, also in school cultures, because I wish I had these kind of talks when I was younger to know, right, how to deal with my brain and be like, hey, these are things that are going to happen to you. Anyway, we have what we have. We have each other. Okay. Let's go to the next step. Reclaiming the narrative. Write down 3 things you've been told are too much or not enough, and then flip them, okay? Too much is reframed as a strength. And so, not to gaslight ourselves, but to kind of ground ourselves, I like to say, if you're too distractible, my brain catches patterns and possibilities others miss. Hello, right? Too intense. I care deeply and throw my whole heart into things. I'm passionate about it. I get this all the time. I'm too much. Never too much for a client who's happy I'm caring. Too talkative. I bring energy and connection into the room. This isn't toxic positivity. It's recalibration of our brain. We have to be our own fucking advocates, right? Or the world will tell us who we are and we'll let it happen, and it will be an endless cycle of us bringing that same narrative into other people's brains, and especially our younger generations. I've been called too much more times than I can count. I've gone into meetings, I asked too many questions, too many ideas, too out there, all of it. I remember I had a boss who told me, and it was a joke, you don't need to say everything that's in your mind. The fuck am I here for? Right? And I wanted to scream, and I wanted to spiral, but I had to take it. And as someone who suppressed it for so long, I knew that that person did not know how my brain worked. I was masking like a motherfucker. I was sitting there in my turtleneck and glasses being like, you're right, sir. And over time, and with a lot of therapy and the shadow work, I'm just getting to a place now where I'm able to see how valuable my too much is. I had to build my own for it, which sucks, but this is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'm not the greatest at it, right? I'm just starting to talk, but I'm fucking here, right? And so now I'm seeing my too much is what's making me able to handle situations like I just told you with being, my team seen that. My team seen someone say I was intimidating, and they watched the process of that not being a real thing. That changed. We had so many conversations. I had to have so many one-on-ones about it because they were so confused, right? We've never brought a situation like that to the table. It wasn't very corporate, right? So that's why my too much is not too much, and now it runs two 7-figure tech companies. So hello, too much. Next is rerouting the response. What's one idea you dismissed too quickly lately? I was hoping to have some people who were not so aware of it to answer this question, but practice making time to approach ideas with curiosity instead of control. Sometimes the most brilliant ideas arrive messy, loud, out of order. It's most of my ideas. and are ahead of schedule, especially from us neurodivergent thinkers. We might interrupt, jump around, pitch something that feels impossible at the moment, but often, very often, we're spotting patterns in future roadblocks already. How many of us do this? We go, look at this, look around. Everyone raise your hand, look around. Look, okay? And there's a specialness to us, there's a special sauce, right? We're valuable, so valuable. This is why half my team, I'm like, first thing I ask when they come on board, what you got? There's something special about you, I could tell. You wouldn't be here if there wasn't. Once, I pitched a very big, slightly chaotic idea in a meeting. The kind that made everybody blink twice. The response was, Veronica, let's stay focused and realistic. Instantly, I shrunk. I quiet myself down, right? I was like, fuck. I was embarrassed. I was like, I just pitched this idea. It was for a brand launch, whatever, product launch. They were talking about, I can still remember it like I was sitting at the table because it's traumatic experiences that you remember, because you always remember when someone does something like that to you, where they make you feel like an outsider completely in a moment where you should be proud of yourself. And they were talking about an issue where we just launched a product, and they were like, how come nobody's buying it? And I had already in my head, because I had already hyper-focused on my project because I was too much, I had already done all the competitor research. I was like watching how every other competitor was advertising and marketing themselves. I had folders, tabs for days. They didn't know that though, right? They didn't know. They just thought I was pitching an idea out of my ass. And it's funny because that same person who said it a week later was like, I cannot get that idea out of my head. After I left, I realized you were right. You're like, yeah, did you see like the 3 buses pass with the advertising and the slogan on it that I said maybe we should do? Like, and again, in that moment was a learning moment for me, and it's something that I take even now with my business partner because she's neurotypical, and we have this problem too. And she said it to me greatly, and I love her. But she said, Veronica, it takes me longer to process things. You have a brain where I know when you bring me an idea, we're 5 years in, it took 3.5 for her to get to this point where she said, you will come to me with an idea, and I will not consider that you probably lived and breathed this idea for the past month or 2. Because usually she's absolutely right. That's what happens. That's why we're successful. And of course, she is a very big part of it, but hello. I will come with ideas, and she will take time to process it. And even in this moment with this colleague, it wouldn't have worked. Like, we still found a fix. We were still going to make it work. But I had to, again, take accountability and ownership that we needed both of our brains in order to do that. So sometimes it's frustrating because our ideas aren't heard, but we have to take the time to figure out how to communicate these things to others who usually take longer to process them, right? It's the harmony. I think harmony is a big part of this. Basically what I'm saying is, with all of these things and us owning who we are, we still have to take accountability that is who we are. Just like they are them, we are us. And we have to know how to make a balance. Some people don't want it, so stay away from them. But some people are open to it, they just need time. Cool. So, now we're gonna have a little fun, and I think we're way ahead of schedule, I think. And I'm gonna call this, we're gonna flip the algorithm together. Okay. It's a little cheesy. Okay. Don't laugh. This is us, right? This is us when we are not speaking up. This is supposed to be flat, but I blew it up because these are really fucking hard to blow up, so I had to put a little air in it. But pretend it's flat, shapeless, lifeless. This is who we are when we're quiet and we don't say shit. Okay, everyone close your eyes. honestly, this is really metaphor. Like, this is an example of how much effort it takes to actually be ourselves sometimes, right? In front of you guys, I'm blowing. This is what it feels like. It's not fun. A little awkward. This is what happens when we start to own our identity, right? Our rhythm, our weirdness, our joy. It's still soft, it's still flexible. You still work with it, right? Oh, ta-da. Okay. I want you guys to toss it around. Keep it in the air. You can do it. I believe in you. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. As we fully step into who we are, we become something people can connect with, right? We're connecting. Keep it in the air. Effort, people. This is the kind of effort it's going to take to speak up in your places. Keep it going. Something they can bounce off, catch, pass around. It becomes a part of the shared experience. This is what happens when we flip the algorithm. We stop shrinking ourselves to fit broken systems. Keep it going. It's effort. It's not easy. It's going to take you finding people who are connected. He's not aligned, okay? Right? He's not aligned. That's adjustment. Find alignment. Who is looking at you? Who is seeing you, right? Who's willing to be bold, right? Because that's what it is. It's a beach ball in a fucking meeting room. Keep it going. Keep it going. What if you're weird is someone else's permission, like this right now, right? What if your story is a spark for someone else's? Okay, I'm proud of you. You can stop. Thank you for doing it, though, right? It felt a little uncomfortable. Some people were too uncomfortable to do it. And those are the ones that we have to look at and help, to be very honest. Because not all of us are brave enough to step out of our comfort zones and speak up. You're not broken. You're not behind. You are not too much. All of you who did that are brave as fuck. You create your own algorithm. You lead just by showing up and doing what you just fucking did. You are the framework for what comes next. So stop shrinking, start shaping, and go be the voice you need. And that's it. We're done. Thank you. And now we have a lot of time. So if anyone wants to ask questions, let's have a discourse. Let's talk. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
So I'm a technical product owner. I work with a lot of engineers on our teams and actually some co-teams. And a lot of the things that you kind of mentioned are very clear to see. I call them quirks too.
Mm-hmm.
And finding the commonalities so we can have conversations to, one, being charged to kind of do the work, but also be aware that their process is different.
Yeah.
And I need to hear it, but I still have to get the work done.
Yes.
And it's like, how do you, in your experience, how do you combat, I won't say combat, that's not a good word, but how do you create that channel where you have your assignments and you got to get the best out of them without breaking their pattern of delivering something?
I feel like we have this a lot where some people, we have a project, we have a timeline, we have a deadline, we have a scope, and we will have, some people on my team have the most brilliant minds, have ideas, we're like, babe, how are we gonna do that? That's like triple what they're paying for. We can't do that, and the timeline is too short. But we listen, and sometimes if the idea is so good, we say, how can we? We become curious. I think curiosity is a big thing that I like to incorporate in everyone in my company, where we do yes and, right? We don't say no. And so we say yes and, how would we do that within this timeline, right? You challenge the person's thought process because maybe it's not something they're thinking about. Is that what you're asking, right?
Yeah, a little bit of it, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so that way, if they do have a solution, great. If they don't, we pocket it. Sometimes we say we could keep this in our minds for when we can do it, but we never dismiss it.
Right.
Yes and is the biggest thing that's changed, I think, a lot of our meetings, because we have even a lot of people on the team who would say that thing where, let's be realistic. And they think that they should get cookies and brownie points for saying that. And I'm like, who the fuck are you to say what's realistic? If that's realistic in their mind. If it isn't, okay, we can admit this is a little bit, sci-fi. Like there's some Lord of the Rings shit. We're talking about fintech. But sometimes it's just saying, yes, and how do we do that with our boundaries and these red lines that we have? How?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Now this goes back to coding.
Okay.
So a lot of times in stories we write code,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not what I asked for. They've kind of been a completely different way of approaching it. Doesn't mean it's wrong. But
It might be,
not
it's wrong.
the assignment, right? And it's kind of like, and of course, when you're dealing with like QA and testing, like this is not exactly what I asked for, and they kind of give their rationale about why they did it this way. And
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you, in your experience, how do you kind of like ring people in when they are clearly doing something they feel is right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not a programmer. I'm trying to figure out how to correct the situation.
Yeah, course correct. So if they did something that is, the thing I love about coding, I was considered a unicorn in San Francisco. It is not the same term anymore, I'll say that. Now I say that, people are like, oh really? Maybe on the weekends. But being a developer and a creative was really hard because I used to do exactly that. I'd be like, I know what the project was, but don't you think this is great? And now when that happens, I have to admit the best way to do it if you're running a business is saying this is wrong, right? Pocket it, do what you want to do with it, but it's wrong. That's my straightforward answer. That's how I do it. I know there are better practices, and maybe we should ask the room for better practices. But if you have someone building out a product, they built out something that's completely not aligned and wrong, then fine. If you have someone who built out a product and they are introducing new ideas to it, and it's not messing up your timeline, it's not messing up the scope, and then even better, if they're doing it in their own time, which a lot of times happens. I see this a lot with the neurodivergent brains on my team. They'll take their own time to do something that they think might be beneficial for the client. And again, I incorporate the yes and, right? I'm happy you did this. This is great. Sometimes I'll just go with it. I've had this happen multiple times. I've had projects that we work on, and I have teams, right? So let's say the dev team, they got together and they're like, we actually think that we should bring this in. Sometimes you don't know what's best. One thing I love to say to my team is, I do not think I'm smarter than you. That is not why you're on my team. I think all of you bring value where you think in a way that I can't, or else why the hell would you be here, right? And so you just go for it. It's not gonna hurt you, right? Especially as a lead. And this is why I was like, if we had certain people here who don't think a certain way, it's taking that chance. It's being curious. I've had multiple times where we were able to upsell a project because someone introduced an idea that normally you would say no to because it wasn't part of the project. And so that is something that I think, again, takes courage and bravery to do, to say, yes, and let's see what happens. Present it to the client. Let's see what they say. And it's worked out a lot for us. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
I'm just going to ask that off and just give my input, take a look at whatever you want.
I wish I could get you a mic.
No, I'm going to say that. Take it out of the context of this person being either neurotypical or neurodiverse. They're just a person. How many times you have heard of somebody in a sales meeting or whatever gets, talks about this product that we're going to do this, that, and the other thing, and no one brings in a tech person. And next thing you know, like there's, the project manager has this whole timeline and they never brought in a tech person to see, is this even doable? And they have this whole grandiosity thing, and then it comes to the tech person's desk, and they're like, what the?
How?
So, you know what I'm saying? So
Oh,
it
yeah.
happens in so many other levels, in so many other places. So I find that sometimes when I am struggling with it, whether it's stuff inside my head or people I'm working with or trying to explain things to, I'm like, okay, how can I flip this into a different context that makes it more tangible? And then I'm not othering. I'm not looking at this person and saying, well, they're this. Because nobody wants that, whether it's of any part of their identity. So if you think about it in another context, sometimes it can help you find that solution, because if I'm going to run with that product that I have to now do because the upper said I had to do created a whole tangent of a solution that no one asked for or needed, but they felt like they needed to produce. Handed it to you, you know, and so it's. I hope I'm connecting this clearly, but like everybody's skeptics. Everybody's skeptics. We just all do it differently. And when you begin to understand that maybe this person, just like how somebody's snapping their fingers because they're thinking, or tapping their pencil, neurodivergent people do that all the time. But yet at the same time, I'm called out for it, where somebody else won't be because they're snapping their their pencil, or I'll be called out because I'm going like this because they're doing that noise, you know. So trying to, I guess, look at sometimes from both lenses, and I think bottom line for me, what I always try to incorporate is universal design, because what is accessible for some is accessible for all. And so if I can look at it through that context of we're all human, and bottom line at the end of the day, disability is a part of the human experience, which is something that no one wants to talk about. It's an inevitability. We will all grow old, God willing, and unfortunately pass. But along that road, disability will factor in. At some point, we're going to need help with whether it's cognitively, physically, or in any way, shape, or form. It's very much the human experience, but it's something that no one ever wants to talk about or plan for.
Yeah, it's a hard conversation. I'm glad that the conversation kind of started with, you know, some of the things that we all come, like, you know, just talking about like race, gender, you know, because most of us have code switched on some level, on some shape or form, and it teaches you, like, when you come into the room, how do you get here, right? Like, am I doing this enough? Is this enough? Can I get here? And when you work with a lot of people, sometimes I volunteer, I work with kids on the spectrum. And you learn that listening is the most important thing you can do. No judgment, just listen. And then I take that to work. You see some of the traits. And it's more, well, I want the best out of you. I want the best situation. I want you to be comfortable to code and do what you do. But I'm responsible for this project. And I have to pull the best out of you without limiting you, but still maintain what I have to do.
Right. So in that situation, you get somebody say, okay, I love that you are out, I can see that you are processing out loud. That's awesome. I get that this is what's happening right now. You are trying to wrap your head around how to take the next step forward. You are verbally responding. And it's not always meaning that you're going to do all these things. You're just thinking out loud.
Yes.
And by saying that to that person, that you're seeing them. Okay, oh, okay, this person, yeah, it's like, all right, great, these are all great, but now,
Can you stay on this one?
right, how can we let's pull these two items, how can we do this?
Yes.
And
Also,
that helps from the going down the rabbit hole and gives that point of focus. It gave that person the ability to have their voice and for them to feel included, appreciated. But having that knowledge of realizing that that person is just processing out loud and saying it to them because they may not even know or have that awareness themselves, all of a sudden it makes that connection of, oh, you got me and I got you now. So now I'm going to fight the world for you because you just fought the world for me. So
Beautiful.
showing up and seeing that individual, even if they don't have the ability to have the language to say, this is what's going on with me. And that's why what she said of knowing yourself and knowing what your strengths or your weaknesses, what's your process, what's your framework, what's your, all of that stuff, you know, is important, you know, and also knowing yourself enough to say, oh, I'm sorry, I know I'm just processing out loud.
I
You
want to
know,
give
I'll shut
other
up and
people a
come back
chance to
to
talk.
you, you know?
I agree. I agree
Yeah.
with everything you're saying, and I wish I could like bring you up here. Very serious. But I do agree with everything. I do want to give other people a chance
Yes,
to speak
I
up too. You're not too much.
Thank you.
I love your brain. I love it.
I'm just trying to help because it is a space that a lot of times people don't have the conversation,
They don't.
especially with people with ADHD. People think it's a childhood thing. There are so many people out there who don't think that it is an adult, you know, and it's the way your brain is wired, just
Yeah.
like your hair color, your eye color, everything.
It is.
And
It's hard for
if
you.
you are not broken, there's nothing wrong with you. This is the way your brain works.
Yeah.
And medical mom. You know?
I want diagnosis, getting diagnosed, I think is super important.
Yes.
I think it's like, it should be looked at as something that is scientific because it is. There is a science to these things that we have. And I think by taking it out of that, it starts creating the everyone thing, where
No,
everyone.
that's not what I meant. What I meant is the deficit mom.
Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to.
Mhm.
Because a proper thing should be an aha moment
Yeah.
of now I understand.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is people looking at it and saying, there's something wrong with you. You are broken. No, I'm not.
Mhm. Did you have a question?
Sort of. It was sort of like entering into the open discussion format. I wanted to frame something around mentorship with neurodivergency. I was lucky enough to have a project manager when I was a junior developer learning Drupal, who was neurotypical but saw my strengths as someone with ADHD as not like a hurdle or a speed bump or something. And they were able to channel that strength. And on projects when we had extra time, they could be like, hey, there are rabbit holes everywhere, go down all of them.
Yes.
And on other projects, when things were much tighter or we were behind, they were able to say, look, we don't have the freedom on this one. And she saw that in me, and it was, I think, very critical to how I developed as a person and a developer. And so I was wondering if anyone else wanted to share other mentorship or strategies around mentorship, particularly maybe bridging between neurotypical and neurodivergent people that were successful to them that might help other people.
I think that's great. Does anyone have anything? I see you.
I was gonna kind of mention and I'm sure this may have happened to other people, where you end up in a room with just neurodivergent people.
I think
Yeah.
we're there right now.
And so, like, if you're just classifying people, you don't have to, right? But if you are, as divergent and typical, I think it helps to recognize that lack of diversity and say, hey, we need to get a neurotypical person in this meeting.
The bouquet.
Right.
Yes.
So I actually have a comment on that, because there's some research to suggest that autistic people work better together when it's just autistic people, and there are no neurotypical people in the group. Yeah. In the same way that, the research. So, neurotypical people can also work in groups. If you were to put an autistic person into that group, it would have worse outcomes.
The candle effect.
See, that's funny, because I work with an autistic woman. I'm ADHD, although I was just diagnosed a month ago. I was diagnosed as dyslexia as a child, so I've been neurospacey my whole life. But the autism, she has a hard time explaining things in a way that our team can understand. Where she's like, Sarah, just do it. Please just tell them, because you get it, and you can explain it. And so I am her translator oftentimes, kind of bridging that gap between the neurotypical and the Audi.
It works together. I feel, from what I've seen, and I try not to do the thing where I do see the difference, but I have to respect it, right? Especially running a creative studio and a lab. The lab is the game development studio. If you did not respect it, brains went wild, right? I have seen that the harmony of having those brains together with guidance works really beautifully. Usually when I have a team of, let's say I have two creatives who are working together, they both are openly have ADHD, we will end up with so much. We will have Figma files for miles. And when I usually bring in someone, and this is why I love how again, by the way, if you want to reach me or anything, information here. But maybe this isn't right, maybe this is wrong, it's practice. I have noticed certain types of ways that people think make certain kinds of roles better. Project managers think a certain way. where they don't thrive and where they feel like the challenge was just me putting them into like fucking war zone. It's not healthy. It doesn't end well. Like there's a big culture with that where it's like, I'm just trying to challenge you. I'm throwing you in as a challenge. And it's like, no, you're just not thinking about me as a human being. You're just thinking about this person as an employee. And that's not healthy. So I will say, while I do agree, maybe there are, I've seen the harmony of it and it's just beautiful. There's a control and a not control. I like the balance. But yeah. And another thing with what you guys were talking about, sometimes if I don't have time and someone approaches me with an idea that's way crazy, I say make it a presentation, put on my calendar. And that helps a lot. I do that more often than I don't.
We have WebEx, and it's amazing how many things come to me on WebEx, and it's like, this is really long.
Mm-hmm.
But I listen and comment,
15
and
minutes.
say I'll get back to it.
Yes.
You know.
Sometimes it's just like, put on my calendar, my team knows, they'll be like, I have an idea. Okay, great, put on my calendar. I have a little Calendly link that's literally called Cough Tea with Me, and it's I have a 10-minute and a 15-minute, and I know who to give that 15 and who to give that 10. And I will say, okay, I need to present your idea. So, there's fixes, right? I think it's just accepting who we are. I really just hope, all I want, this is why I'm just starting this. Again, this is my second talk, so I'm still new here. But it's just, I see the power of us illuminating when we talk to people like us, right? When we are able to talk openly and have discourse about these things, we're able to see each other. Right now, society paints such a crazy picture of us, whether it's no matter what you are on the scale of the spectrum, there's an image of what we look like and how we act that people just expect. We have to repaint and retell the story.
I have one real quick before we go.
No?
And part of the conversation is also about hiring.
Okay.
Do you have any tips or conversations about how? Because maybe I'll just message you.
Where'd it go? Just message me. I have tips for days because I literally have I did a whole online thing about how we conduct interviews for certain job roles, right? And how to make sure that you don't do them specifically for certain people. You do them specifically for everyone. You build it into the foundation, remember? So I think there's like a thing with interviews where to save time, go on ChatGPT. I'm serious.
Really?
And say, you're exact. I say this now so often because I'm like, I am very much, our studio is becoming an AI-driven studio, and all the work that comes in is for it, but I love how ChatGPT is enlightening so many people on these issues. And you ask it how to make, if you have an interview for a certain role, you already have your questions aligned. You put those questions in and you say, hey, am I considering this group? Am I considering these groups? And it will help you. I've done it. I know how I want to be talked to in an interview, but I still use other resources to do it. There's no excuse for companies